For years, the idea of a Tesla tiny house has sounded like freedom. No massive mortgage, no rising utility bills, no dependency on the grid, just a compact, efficient home powered by solar panels and batteries. Simple. Affordable. Independent. But here's the uncomfortable question nobody asks. What does it actually cost to live in a Tesla-style tiny house for 10 years? Not the marketing price. Not the headline cost, the real cost. Because buying a small home is one thing, maintaining it, powering it, insuring it, upgrading it, that is where the true financial story unfolds. Tesla has already proven it can integrate solar panels, battery storage, and smart energy systems through products like Powerwall. So the idea of a Tesla tiny house is not science fiction. It is a logical extension of the ecosystem. But affordability is not just about purchase price. It is about long-term economics. In this video, we are going to break down the realistic upfront cost of a Tesla tiny house in 2026, the energy independence, math, maintenance, and replacement expenses, and the full 10-year financial picture that most people never calculate because sometimes the cheapest looking option hides the biggest long-term surprises. Quick reminder before we continue. If you want realistic Tesla analysis focused on long-term costs and not just exciting headlines, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. We break down real numbers, not just promises. Now let us start with the first major piece of the puzzle. The actual purchase price versus what you really need to spend. The real upfront cost, house plus solar plus battery plus land. When people hear Tesla tiny house, they imagine one number, maybe $50,000, maybe $60,000, but that number is incomplete because the house itself is only one part of the equation. Let us break this down properly. 1. The structure itself, a high-quality, prefab tiny home with insulation, plumbing, HVAC, and interior finishing can realistically cost between $40,000 and $80,000 depending on size and materials if Tesla were to enter this market. Expect premium materials and integrated smart systems that alone likely pushes the base structure closer to the higher end of that range. Now, here is what most people forget. A tiny house without energy independence is just a small house. The real Tesla appeal is the energy system. 2. Solar installation. A. Properly sized solar setup for full off-grid or near off-grid living typically requires between 6 to 10 kilowatts of solar panels. Installed cost could range from $15,000 to $30,000 depending on region and incentives. If integrated with Tesla's ecosystem, you would likely use products tied to their energy division. Tesla already offers solar solutions that connect directly with Powerwall systems, which brings us to the most expensive component. 3. Battery storage. Energy independence requires storage. Single Powerwall unit currently costs several $1,000s before installation. Most off-grid or semi-off-grid setups require at least 2 units for reliability. That could easily add $15,000 to $25,000 installed. And that is before considering backup redundancy. 4. Land. This is the part that dramatically changes the equation. Tiny homes are affordable. Land is not, depending on location. Even a small parcel can range from $10,000 in rural regions to over $100,000 near urban centers. Many people forget this cost entirely. You cannot live in the house without somewhere to place it. 5. Site preparation and utilities. Foundation work. Permits. Water connection or well drilling, septic system or sewage. Tie-in. These costs can quietly add another $10,000 to $30,000. Now let us total this conservatively. House. $60,000. Solar. $20,000. Battery storage. $20,000. Land. $30,000. Site preparation. $20,000. That equals approximately $150,000. $1,000. Not even close. Now, to be fair, incentives and tax credits can reduce solar and battery costs, but even with incentives, the fully functional Tesla-style tiny house setup is likely 6 figures. That does not mean it is a bad investment. It means the marketing, Headline does not tell the full story, and this is just the beginning, because upfront cost is only part of. The equation. The real question is what happens over 10 years. Energy savings. Maintenance. Battery. Replacement. Insurance. Unexpected repairs. That is where the financial reality becomes clear. Can a Tesla tiny house actually save you money? Now, we move from cost to savings because the only reason a six-figure tiny house makes sense is if it reduces long-term expenses. So let us compare two scenarios over 10 years. A traditional small house connected to the grid versus a Tesla-style tiny house powered by solar and batteries. Scenario 1, traditional grid-connected home. The average American household spends between $150 and $200 per month on electricity. That equals roughly $2,000 per year over 10 years. That is $20,000. And that number does not include inflation. Energy prices historically rise over time. If rates increase even modestly, 10-year costs could exceed $25,000. Now add grid connection fees, occasional rate hikes. Outage-related costs. Traditional energy is predictable, but it is not fixed. Scenario 2, Tesla tiny house with solar plus Powerwall with a properly sized solar system and battery storage. Electricity bills could drop close to zero for daily use. You still pay minor grid fees in some regions, but monthly energy bills could fall dramatically. Now, here is the catch. Solar panels degrade slowly over time. Battery systems have lifespans. A typical lithium-based home battery system may last 8 to 15 years depending on usage. Tesla Powerwall systems are designed for durability, but replacement may be required at some point beyond the 10-year mark. Within 10 years, maintenance is typically minimal: cleaning panels, monitoring, system performance, occasional inverter servicing. So if the tiny house eliminates $20,000 to $25,000 in electricity costs over 10 years, that is real savings. But remember, you already paid for the solar and battery system up front, which means the savings are offsetting your initial investment. The financial advantage grows stronger the longer you stay in the home. Energy independence becomes more powerful after year 10, not before. Now, here is something rarely discussed. Psychological value. Energy independence reduces anxiety during outages. It protects against rate spikes. It adds stability during grid disruptions. That value is difficult to measure in dollars, but it matters. However, energy savings alone will not justify the full investment. We still need to factor in maintenance costs. Insurance. Property taxes and potential battery replacement, because this is where the cheap living narrative often becomes complicated, and that is exactly what we need to examine next. If you appreciate realistic cost breakdowns instead of marketing hype, subscribe to the channel. We focus on long-term financial clarity, the hidden expenses nobody mentions upfront. Cost is one thing. Energy savings are another. But the real financial story of a Tesla tiny house unfolds quietly over time, because homes do not just sit there. They age, they require maintenance, they create unexpected expenses. Let us break this down honestly. 1. Solar maintenance and inverter replacement. Solar panels themselves are low maintenance. However, inverters typically last 8 to 12 years. Replacing an inverter system can cost several $1,000s. Cleaning panels may be simple, but if you live in a dusty or snowy region, professional cleaning services may be needed occasionally. That adds small but recurring costs. 2. Battery degradation and replacement risk. Home battery systems degrade gradually. Most lithium-based systems maintain strong performance for many years, but they do not last forever. Tesla designs its energy systems for long-term durability. However, after 10 years, you may experience reduced storage capacity. If replacement becomes necessary outside warranty coverage, that could cost $10,000 to $20,000 depending on system size. This is one of the biggest long-term financial variables. 3. Insurance costs. Tiny house insurance is not always cheaper than traditional home insurance. In fact, it can be more complicated. Off-grid systems, solar equipment, and battery installations increase replacement value. Annual insurance. may range from $1,000 to $2,000 depending on location. Over 10 years, that is $10,000 to $20,000. Many people forget to include this. 4. Property taxes. Even tiny homes are subject to local taxation in most regions. Land ownership means ongoing property taxes, depending on location. That could range from a few $100s per year to several thousand over 10 years. This adds up significantly. 5. General maintenance, roof repairs, plumbing issues, HVAC, servicing, appliance replacement. Even small homes experience wear and tear. A safe estimate for maintenance is 1% to 2% of property value per year on a $150,000 setup. That could mean $1,500 to $3,000 annually. Over 10 years, that could equal $15,000 to $30,000. Now let us pause. Add up. Insurance. Taxes. Maintenance. Possible inverter replacement. You are easily looking at $30,000 to $60,000 over 10 years in ongoing costs. This does not mean the Tesla tiny house is a bad idea. It means the idea of almost free living is misleading. Every property carries responsibility. Energy independence reduces utility bills. It does not eliminate ownership costs. And this is where the real 10-year math starts to get interesting, because now we need to compare total 10-year ownership of a Tesla tiny house versus renting versus buying a small traditional home. That comparison will determine whether this is financially smart or just emotionally appealing, which option actually wins after 10 years. Now we arrive at the real question, not whether a Tesla tiny house is exciting, not whether it looks futuristic, but whether it makes financial sense compared to your other options. Let us compare 3 paths over 10 years. Scenario A, Tesla tiny house, upfront setup estimate. Approximately $150,000. 10-year additional costs. Insurance, maintenance, taxes, possible inverter servicing, estimated. Additional 10-year cost, $40,000 conservatively. Total 10-year cost, approximately $190,000. Now, remember, you own the asset, you still have land, you still have solar infrastructure, you still have long-term energy independence. After 10 years, you likely retain resale value. Scenario B, renting. Average rent in the United States is roughly $1,500 per month. That equals $18,000 per year. Over 10 years, $180,000. And at the end of 10 years, you own nothing. No equity. No land. No asset. Yes, renting avoids maintenance responsibility, but financially, you are paying for flexibility. Not ownership. Scenario C, buying a small traditional home. Small home purchase price, $250,000 on average in many regions. With mortgage interest, taxes, insurance, and utilities over 10 years, total cost can easily exceed $300,000. However, you build equity. You benefit from potential appreciation, but you remain dependent on grid electricity and rising utility costs. Now here's what becomes clear. The Tesla tiny house sits in the middle. It is more expensive upfront than renting, less expensive long-term than many traditional homes, more independent than both, but it requires capital. If you cannot comfortably afford the upfront investment, the financial pressure may outweigh the benefits. If you can afford it and plan to stay long-term, the math becomes more attractive after year 10, because once the system is paid for, energy savings continue, and that is when the advantage compounds. But here is the deeper reality. This decision is not purely financial. It is psychological. Some people value freedom from utility companies. Lower lifestyle footprint, energy independence, simplified living. Others value space. Stability. Community infrastructure. Urban access. There is no universal answer, only context. And this is where the conversation becomes even more important. Because Tesla is not just selling hardware. Tesla is selling a lifestyle shift, energy, independence. Minimalism. Decentralization. The question is not just whether it is affordable. The question is whether it fits your long-term vision, the real 10-year truth. So after breaking down the upfront cost, the solar and battery, investment. The maintenance. The insurance. The taxes, the 10-year comparison, What is the real answer? Is the Tesla tiny house truly affordable? Here is the honest truth. It is not cheap. It is strategic. That is the difference. The marketing narrative focuses on simplicity and low bills, but the real value lies in control. If you are expecting a $50,000 miracle home with zero expenses for 10 years, that is unrealistic. Ownership always carries cost. But if you are looking at long-term stability, energy independence, lower monthly utility exposure, smaller financial footprint, then the Tesla tiny house becomes financially rational over time, especially after year 10, because once the system is paid off, the benefits continue. Lower energy bills, reduced grid dependence, resilience during outages, predictable long-term living expenses, and that stability has value. Now, here is the critical part. Most people ignore. Affordability is not about price alone. It is about alignment. If you plan to move every 2 years, this does not make sense. If you need large living space, this does not make sense. If you are financially stretched already, this does not make sense. But if you want a long-term base. Lower lifestyle complexity. Energy autonomy. And you can afford the initial investment. Then over 10 years, it can absolutely compete with renting and even traditional home ownership. Tesla has already shown it can integrate energy systems at scale. If a Tesla-branded tiny house ever becomes widely available, it will not be about being the cheapest. It will be about being efficient and independent, and that is a very different conversation. So here is the final takeaway. The Tesla tiny house is not a shortcut to free living. It is a long-term financial and lifestyle strategy, and like any strategy, it only works if it fits your situation. If you want honest Tesla analysis that looks at real long-term costs instead of just hype, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Comment below. Would you choose energy independence in a tiny house, or would you rather stick with a traditional home? I want to hear your reasoning. In the next video, we are breaking down whether Tesla could bundle a tiny house with a Model 2 and Powerwall into one ecosystem package. That changes the math completely, so stay tuned. Thank you for watching. Stay smart with your money. Stay realistic with the numbers, and I will see you in the next one.